Okay, I will call this meeting to order. River, it is 5 p.m. Any modifications, additions to the agenda?
So just a slight modification. I just wanted to correct the reference to the Hobie hanger. It should be the stripe hanger. And so throughout the document, we were using the incorrect term. So just for the record, uh, all of the agenda items are regarding strike hanger, not the Hobie.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I do have a minor question on C. So when we go to the
When we get
consent,
there.
if I can at least ask that
Of
question.
course.
Okay.
Okay, public comment. I know that we have Tracy Thomas on Zoom. Hi, Tracy. And do we have anyone else signed up for public comment? If not, I will turn the floor over to you. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Hi, commissioners. My name is Tracy Thomas Paul, and I live in Hood River. I'm speaking tonight because I wanted to express my concern over the proposed foundation that the port plans to consider this evening. There are multiple issues that could be of interest to the community and that definitely concern me. First, this idea seems to have evolved out of the desire to find funding for operations along the waterfront. I first heard about it in one of the port's meetings when you described a gorge-inspired license plate. But Oregon's special license plate, as you know, can only be sold by 501c3 organizations. Some of the best ones in the state include the Coastal Playground plate that supports the OSU's Marine Mammal Institute, and there are lots of others like that. So it looks like the port did some research to find out how to become or create a 501c3. Last month, the port's finance director reported, quote, "The attorney helping with the bylaws says it cannot look like the not-for-profit is merely a shell of the port. What this means is that parks maintenance is already a requirement of the port, so it can't really be replicated in the not-for-profit," end of the quote. So now we come to tonight's proposal. The IRS says that a 501c3 charity must have a purpose that is charitable, educational, or scientific. So tonight's resolution states that the purpose of this nonprofit formed by the port will be, quote, "to support the Port of Hood River in charitable, educational, and scientific endeavors." Okay. Then the proposed bylaws of the new foundation state, quote, "This corporation shall hold its primary purposes to be charitable, educational, and scientific purposes of a 501c3, including to support the governmental property of Hood River," end of the quote. This doesn't really mean anything. You're just repeating boilerplate from the IRS, and you're not stating a true purpose for this foundation. The stated purpose, supporting governmental property of Hood River, is ambiguous at best. Governmental property means both real and personal property of a governmental agency. Does that mean the foundation could spend funds to buy new computers for port employees? That could be construed as supporting governmental property, but it's hardly charitable, educational, or scientific. And remember the legal counsel's warning that a foundation can't just be a shell raising funds for things the port is supposed to pay for. Further, the purpose isn't even limited to the port, because the city and county of Hood River also have governmental property. Is the foundation going to be helping those in some way? Please compare this so-called purpose of your proposed nonprofit to other great organizations in the county. There are lots of real mission statements out there. For instance, Hood River Library Foundation, which describes its mission, quote, "to raise funds and community support to ensure vibrant libraries in Hood River County." That's specific, it's educational, it's charitable. I urge you to go back to the drawing board and consider what real mission a foundation, if at all appropriate, could or should have. I'm also concerned about the suggestion in tonight's proposal that port staff are going to keep the records for this foundation, file the annual taxes for it, do the annual audit for the foundation. What kind of controls are going to be in place to ensure separation of duties between port staff and any foundation volunteers? How's the foundation funds going to be adequately segregated and not applied to statutorily required funding that the port is required to do for maintenance and operations? Lots of questions like that. If the port foundation is part of the port's operations, Well, what sort of public meeting laws are going to be used to notify the public about meetings? Who's going to serve on the board? How are you going to gather volunteers for it? Again, I think lots and lots of concerning questions. It feels premature and as though it's still being done as a way to get additional funds as the future of no bridge tolls and rising maintenance costs loom. That's fine, and maybe the board's license plate is fine, but this foundation does not feel like it's been well thought through at all. And I also couldn't find any other port in the state, and I looked through many of the other 30-some ports, and I couldn't find a foundation associated with any of them. So if you've got one, I'd love to take a look at it so I could read what their bylaws and information state. So that's what I had to say tonight. The only other thing I had to say is not about the foundation, but I did want to congratulate you guys on a really fun celebration on the bridge last week. I know you'll probably have a report on that, but I was there with 4,000 or so other people. It was well done and clearly marked, and just was a beautiful day. And I think people had a lot of fun. So that was a fun time, and appreciate all the work that people who worked on it did. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And we're definitely not trying to dismiss anything that you're saying, and everything will be taken into consideration. We just don't respond or discuss the public comments at this time, but it is noted, and we will direct staff to make sure that we are being fully transparent in all of our spending. Okay, consent agenda. Commissioner Fox, you did say you have an item that you would like to.
I just want to check with staff on item C, approved purchase of hangar door. When I look at the 3 quotes that were provided in the package, unless I'm reading them wrong, there's 2 quotes for material only. They don't include installation. And the first quote is, at least what was in the package was 1 page, 1 door, this amount. And it's like, are we sure we know what we're buying? And is that quote, does that meet all of the requirements that we have? Or are we going to get surprised? I mean, just looking at it on the surface, and it's dangerous to do that, I could say somebody could put up a shag carpet going across the opening, and that's the door. So is there a specification and somebody's checked it and this quote actually fits the need? Because you can't tell it from the document that is in the package.
Yeah, Jeff, I know Jeff has been studying this for quite some time.
Yes, and the quote that I was recommending that we go with Kevin Cole is a 2-inch steel tubes frame construction, similar to most all the other sliding hangar doors. It is one that the original quote came through with tack arrow or hood arrow originally, and Kevin modified it as he's no longer with hood arrow doing that.
So you've got more than just the 1 page that's included in this document in the package.
No, there's just the 1 quote of.
The 1 quote that I saw is a 1-pager, and I can bring it up. It's
I don't think I printed it out.
I have it up here.
you have a page. It's
It
page
starts on page 11. It's on page 13.
That one there.
Is it for Kevin Cole?
13. It takes time. These guys got a 184-page package.
I'm sorry, I think that's my fault.
Yeah. So
Fabrication and installation.
yeah. If you guys are satisfied that this is what you want and you're convinced that what this says is what you want, I'm fine. It looks a little light. And if you had an honorary contractor, they could give you stuff that you really don't want. It's really, really loose. But if you guys have looked at it and you're satisfied with it, I'm okay with it. But we really don't have 3 bids. You have 1 bid, because the other 2 are non-conforming. Unless I read it wrong, there's no installation on the other 2.
Correct. I did not get I did not get any installation costs tied to the others because the doors were so dramatically, it's
Okay.
so much more expensive.
Yeah.
Okay, I can certainly do that. I mean, it was, when the prices had such a disparity between them, I know Kevin, I worked with Kevin for well, the last 7 years. I know the quality of his work, I know what he does.
And to me, that's fine. I could see on the other doors, they're a much more sophisticated door. They've got a much heavier duty frame or and locking mechanisms and so on. This feels like more of a economical plain Jane door.
Yes, it's
And
simple.
and I'm fine with that if that's what you guys wanted.
Cool. Clarifying questions I might clarify. Has Kevin's company, have they done other hangar doors?
Yes, I've had to do repair at the Dallas on other doors. We did a very similar model, the same thing on the Otis hangers that West did the thing.
Yeah. Okay. So Commissioner Fox, to speak to your questions a little bit, Schweiss, I think is kind of like the gold standard doors. And they make a bifold door and it's very nice. And the door discounted is about $63,000.
No question.
Installation should be on top of that. But I would just say that a sliding door is perfectly fine and acceptable on a hanger like that. And it definitely does need a new door that is functional. And this serves that need.
And I'm fine with that. If you guys are fine with it, I'm fine with it. The other doors will be nicer than the rest of the hangar.
Yeah, they would.
I get that part.
Yeah.
That was.
But I'm
part of
just saying,
the question.
looking at it from a commissioner point of view, you brought 3 bids to us with a recommendation, but you really didn't tell us that, oh, by the way, you got 2 non-conforming bids.
Gotcha.
Right? We
And
had to
to,
dig for it.
and to clarify too, it sounds like even though there's just a 1-page proposal here, there is additional information that just isn't in the packet of what you were saying is the type of construction and type of door that's gonna be in, that just isn't listed
I
specifically.
didn't include the blueprints, the drawings in the,
So it sounds like we have it, it's just not,
Again, all I see is what I see.
yes.
Okay,
point taken.
I'm satisfied.
Okay, then with that, here, then, are there any other questions for consent? And if not, may I get a motion?
Move that we approve the consent items under the consent agenda.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Informational reports, any questions for Mr. Greenwood on the height restriction memo?
Yeah, it sure seems to me that the cheapest option won't work anyway. Because if the guy didn't feel hitting the 6 horizontal members, he's not gonna feel
Like
hit the plastic pipe on some chain. So to me, that one is kind of a waste of time. The other ones are so expensive, I don't think I would do them. The other option.
So that's great feedback. Thank you for that. I guess the only question was, should any reason to bring this forward into fall planning, or that was the main thing, is just to complete that task from HDR. But if I'm not hearing the need to bring it forward, we'll leave it off.
Personally, I don't see spending that kind of a money for the other systems for what's left on the life of the bridge. And again, they would probably run right through it anyway.
Okay, great. Thank you for the feedback.
Okay, North Apron.
Yeah, so this is Jeff's item. The main thing right now is that we've got a lot of interest in the Jeanette Road pad on the North Apron. And so I think this is a good opportunity for the commission to share with Jeff what its expectations are when Jeff's meeting with potential developers out there. So he's kind of laid out a map and some criteria, and at this point, I'll hand it over to Jeff to kind of lead the discussion.
I like where you were going with me understanding what the expectation from the past is from each of you, what the desires are. And, I've met with Ron Kurahara in regard to some sort of vegetation barrier, a shielding from the airport, trying to work through how to best get some land leases going on some construction on there, but yet still meet all the needs of everybody. I know the airport wants the port would like to have the parking for these hangars. We have the Terry Brandt easement issue, and trying to figure out what the most cost effective way to do that is. And this is what my studies have come up with, is eliminate the idea of the parking on the east side, just put the vegetation barrier on the east side that guards that. Move the parking into actual airport property and put a gate, a keypad gate off of Jeanette Road, which allows the fire department, the garbage truck, who both need access into the airport anyhow, the path through the airport. The Brandt easement is only used but about once a year to access that piece of grass at this point, for the flying. By creating that easement there and putting the yellow stop lines on the picture, if you're looking at that, there's drive lanes on every airport where automotive and aircraft mix. We can create that exact same scenario, and for the few times that their aircraft are going to be crossing that road, we have the proper measures in place.
Hey, Jeff, I just want to throw in here real quick to help out that this proposal that he's got in front of you right here with this orientation is the recommendation from the airport committee as well, in terms of like the best way to proceed with managing this. So I just want to throw that out.
So is there on the parking, in the upper right corner of this where you've got your arrows and so on, is there a gate or a fence from the parking lot onto the apron coming into the two hangars? Or is that wide open?
From Jeanette Road onto where it says airport.
No, it's at the very top. Wish I had a pointer, but you have a crossed, I'm gonna call it left to right. You've got a bunch of parking stalls. And where you have the easement or the easement coming across, is there a fence there?
This is helpful. Here's the hangers.
Yeah.
And so if you
Yeah.
can point on here.
Yeah, what I'm after is, we're talking about this corner right up here.
Yep.
Okay, and we're talking about making parking across this way,
Mhm.
even over here. Now, this is an access easement, as we talked about. Is there a fence coming across here that isolates the parking lot from this area here?
There is a wire fence on the south side of the parking lot, the bigger parking lot, against the back of those future building sites. Over on that section, there is not. There is just where the yellow stop line would be at the easement. It's just a wire fence at this point. That would have to be addressed.
Yeah, so your thought would be that you'd put a hard fence across here
Correct.
with some kind of a gate that allows the planes to come through. My question then would be, if you're gonna put a fence here, where are you gonna have access from the cars to get into this area? Do they have to walk all the way down here to get in? Or are you planning on putting a man gate over here?
And I honestly wasn't planning on it. In that scenario, I wasn't planning on anything where the future terminal building would be.
Okay.
The access is already there at the backside. When the future terminal building went in, this was just literally the lot next to where the fuel tank is at.
Yeah, so you've got, it's this piece right here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But on that drawing, it shows that you're gonna make this northern piece here, a parking area. for
And
this.
a road that runs all the way from Jeanette to Airport Air Museum.
Yes, yes. Now, once you build the hangar here and a hangar down here, like you show there, is this free access from a car parked here? They can walk right around and go in?
There would have to be a man gate or,
Okay.
yes, there would
That's
have to be
what I was
control.
after. Are you thinking about putting a
Yes,
man gate and a fence?
there would be some sort of control to
Okay,
limit that access.
that's what I was after.
I didn't go into that detail on that.
Okay.
I am not even close to as good as Patty is on making these drawings, so forgive my crayons. The only other, I mean, the master plan drawing that's always been talked about in the advisory committees and some of the different stuff was a set of buildings with all the doors facing west. That is by far the best use of the property. We just so far haven't had anybody that's willing to invest in building that process because nobody wants their doors facing that way. In this scenario with doors facing north and south, it definitely benefits the tenants more or lack of wind through their building, but they are going to be responsible for that piece of pavement. Between 50% of that pavement in front of their building is going to be part of their lease share because it is dedicated space at that point. It's no longer a public, it is truly a public access, but it's going by the orientation of what they desire for a building. It's their rent space.
So how much square feet did we lose by orienting it that way?
Definitively, couple hundred feet.
Yeah.
Well,
You could have gotten another hangar in there, right?
correct. Yeah, and if we did the full length in buildings with the doors facing west, we would have far more leasable space. And if the board had the money to do it, that would be my suggestion, is that we just fund and build those. They'll lease. I mean, there's buildings everywhere with doors facing west.
Okay, so the one on the south side, the larger hangar,
Yes,
does it have doors facing north and doors facing south?
it potentially could. It could be a drive-through. What I don't know, there's a whole bunch of infrastructure that was put into that end of that pad. I don't know what it is. None of it's in service at this point. And so until I do a little bit more research on that, it was more just a depiction. I have somebody that's interested in building the one to the north.
My whole idea behind this is, can we squeeze another hangar in there if we take that south hangar? Either move it closer to the fuel tank unless there's a limited access there, you can't do it. You can't do it?
No.
Okay,
And
so if you made that second hangar a little bit higher, if you will, can you get a door going south and a door going north and stick more hangar space in there for additional airplanes?
that I would maximize every inch that could be used. Yes. I can't tell you definitively how much more we could go either way. Where do you come up with that we couldn't go further south?
Well, I know there is a limitation of space around the fuel, right?
I don't think it's that great though. I think
Okay, so
there
we
is
need to find out.
viability.
I know there's some limitation and I know you need to have room to maneuver aircraft.
But there's no aircraft on that side of the fuel farm. So that is a really good point.
So I'm just thinking, if you're not gonna have a double door system and you can slide that farther to the south, can you squeeze another one in the middle and get some more hangar space out of that vertical line?
And maybe the middle would have
Right.
a door on the facing west,
Facing
are you
west.
talking?
No,
It would still
I'm
face
talking about moving,
where the arrows are, you'd add another building.
yeah, by. If you're gonna make this one
It'd be called Mike's Point.
closet hangar where you've got a door going north and a door going south, I see this, I get it.
Yep.
If you're not gonna do that, why not slide this down a bit? Is there enough room to slide this down? Get enough space there to squeeze another one in between, so you have 2 accesses and 3 hangars.
Oh, so two taxiways between
Yeah.
us. There's definitely not enough room for that. Yeah, the space between there, given the aircraft type, would have to be a minimum of 75 feet, but the FAA, if it's going to be called a taxiway, the FAA will tell you it has to be 115 feet wide.
So then I would come back to this one and say, based on the room that you've got there and the room that you've got here, can you put doors on both sides and instead of having whatever it is, two hangars, you have two hangars stacked on each other. I'm just trying to squeeze the space.
Agreed. Yes, that's, if I can turn it into four, basically a fourplex,
Yeah,
would be the best use of the property. If not, my suggestion would be that we put the largest box hangar with the doors facing west. And let that be a lead space to a commercial business going forward. Yeah. I'm just trying to loot every square foot of this airport, that how do we make it make money? The fourplex is the best use of that space, if we can do that, or we just put a big box hangar up and lease it to somebody.
and we get a grant from the federal to try and build a hangar.
Not through the FAA. There's funds available. You're not gonna get enough to do a grant. Connect Oregon has funds for building projects such as this. Or you can complement those. You can't do a core grant and a Connect Oregon grant together. Connect Oregon just gave the Dalles 1.8 million to build 2 rows of T hangars. They announced that Thursday.
Personally, I'd rather we own the hangar instead of land lease out and let somebody build on it and they're collecting all the revenue from.
Agreed. That is by far the best. It's how do we fund that? And I love the idea of the community center. I love kind of what your architect said. I don't know if that's even a viable scenario, but if there's a way, if you're gonna have to build a building to move yourself from this facility, and that's an option to get a tenant space on that airport. Oh my goodness. I mean, that puts that. Yeah, that changes a whole bunch of stuff.
So for the purposes of tonight, you are looking for a thumbs up to keep moving forward.
Yes, if the commission is agreeable to this rough idea, then I would like to have the gentleman that wants to develop bring forward his plan. My concern is, and I put it on this other sheet, we talked about in some of the previous discussions that the developer would be responsible for all of the parking, the cost associated and whatnot. And some of that is making it very cost prohibitive to get somebody to spend the money. It's just going to come down to a return on investment for them as well. So someplace in there, we have to get a balance in that. And I guess I would like to have them say, here's what I'm willing to do. I'm willing to split the cost of the blacktop and Fort maintains it, or bring their proposal. Because I think if we don't start entertaining some stuff, we're going to be 18 months down the road and still not have anybody leasing ground or building buildings.
I think in the past, we had talked about like 3/4 packed gravel, which was a real maintenance issue. And I think at the time, the commission said they would need to put in asphalt, which would make it easier for the port to maintain. So that was the trade-off there. But I think the last time we discussed it was that if you're going to do the land lease, then they would be responsible for all the asphalt, fencing, and capital investment.
That's
I'm a-
why
I'm a
I
little
would really
confused.
like to understand opportunities for grants.
Yeah, and aren't we exploring the opportunity to build something up there ourselves?
For the
For
other,
this one.
for the other
Oversight.
pat side, yeah.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
So it's roughly what it.
Um,
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, but I just agree with Commissioner Fox that if there's any way we can find to own it ourselves and get the income from leasing out the spaces, that just seems like something we should hold on to if we can. I know we're going in circles with that, but
Yeah, we are. Maybe what you do, just an idea, is we get this whole thing moving. And we looked strongly at a land lease for at least one or two of these over in the far right
Yep.
corner.
Yeah.
Get the system moving, and in the meantime, we really look hard at grants and putting together this plan for the administration office and FBO and so on, and
Yeah.
really push out on that. Maybe think about moving this office up there, use some of the funds that you get from here to go start that. But that's something that
Was Claudia's design didn't have all the doors facing west?
Yes.
But that's what the tenants are pushing back. They actually don't want.
It was, if we were to say that's what we want, if we want to maximize the property, that's the best use by far. People are still gonna lease the space. I have no doubt.
But do
There's
we
such-
have to make that specific decision tonight, or is tonight more of a, you're on the right path, let's keep moving forward?
I
And
think-
as you bring in stuff, then we'll have to consider stuff
Yes.
individually.
I think where we're at tonight is that we need to, if you guys agree that I'm on the right path, then we take developers' ideas, let them bring the proposal. If it pencils, great. If it doesn't, then we go back to the drawing board. Jumping just a little bit ahead on my notes from Moama, from the conference I went to. The biggest thing I took out of that really resonated for Hood River is that becoming a resiliency center, I mean, having that component, that's where the money's gonna come from, that we get this building from. And so we really need to, Hood River is still inside of the subduction zone, but we're far enough east that I think there's money, and I really do. There's so much, and they're pushing so hard on this drone corridor, and there's no space for them to go. And I think that's gonna be where we go after our biggest money, is through some of this resiliency stuff to get these buildings built. And don't call it an FBO, call it it's a terminal building, it's a community center,
It's a resource center.
yeah, it's a resource center to store the emergency supplies and house staff.
If I could jump in, I think you hit a really important topic about land versus building leases. And so right now, what Jeff is bringing forth is really for land leases. And so I think that's something that you need to continue to press on, so that Jeff, some of this, should it go towards a land, or should some of it go towards the building? I mean, I think that's really important, because we don't have, who knows how long it's gonna take for us to get the capital, to build the hangars. Whereas it sounds like Jeff has at least one or two people that are willing to do a land lease sooner and start getting something going. Is that right, Jeff?
Yes, and if that gets us closer to self-sustainment, then we're successful, and we continue to get ultimately, I may have said it before, but these hangars that people build are they're a selfish passion, selfish motivation, in that at whatever point they're not flying anymore, you're not going to have they're a horrible investment. They don't pay back like a mini storage or anything else. They're just one of those things that you want a place to put your airplane and do business if you're in that world. But at the point that they're out, the port has the option to buy that hangar back from them, and you're going to buy it back without the prevailing wage component tied to it as well. People's markets change. I mean, you could have the guy that wants to build this decides that he doesn't want to live there anymore, and off he goes. That hangar's up for sale. We are first in line to purchase it before anybody else.
So I'm personally in favor of you moving forward with this, just to the caveats that anyone that does a land lease, they need to be willing to invest into some vegetation border there. As far as paving, because we'd be looking at doing a road across, it doesn't seem fair or reasonable to make the developer pay to pave all the way over to across that. But definitely the parking, or most of the parking right to the north of the.
Yeah,
the
we call
building.
it an SDC or something to that effect. I mean, we create some component that there's a cost associated with doing this this site.
So they would pay for parking.
Correct. They would pay for the improvements around it,
Right.
or a percentage of the improvements, because the future building would also have a use of those parking spaces as well. So we
Yeah.
just
You can figure out the value of that road, divide it over 6
Yeah, 6 units.
6 years.
So I'd like to see you move forward with it. I think in the past, we've supported, doing some land leases over there to get some construction, to get some stuff happening and to generate at least a little revenue. So,
I think it'll generate some revenue, and I think if we get one going,
Generate.
yes, we'll get the ball rolling.
Okay, any other questions for Jeff? Thank you very much for your time. Waterfront development proposals. Stafford. And before you start, I was under the assumption that this was naturally going to coming to us at fall plan. So I was curious as to why it's.
Well, there were a number of ideas that came to Daryl, and so she's asking, are any of them worthy bringing to fall planning for further discussion?
Oh, I thought all of them were gonna be brought to fall planning and that
Well,
was.
I'll let Daryl speak to it, but none of the ones that came forward met the criteria.
Oh, okay.
And so that's, I think, why Daryl's.
So at the resolution that the commission approved at spring planning, it said a couple different things. One, that we could bring it forward to fall planning, but that twice a year, the commission would entertain concession applications. But looking at the guidelines for it, most of the applications don't qualify for the current guidelines, the ones that I've received. It's things over water, things in areas that we don't want to put concessions right now. I did have one come by today that could potentially qualify for meeting all the requirements on that, but it's kind of like a chicken and the egg type thing. When you look at it, it's like, well, is the commission interested in changing your resolution, which would happen at spring planning? Then we can bring in different concessions, or before I tell people to come in and start talking to you at fall planning and put it on the agenda, do you just want to hear everybody pitch their ideas? And is fall planning where you want to hear that? Or did you want me to put it at a December meeting? And so I thought I better ask before we dive down the fall planning thing, because it's a long meeting. And if you want to hear everyone's ideas, that's great.
I would say if it doesn't meet our standards, then
Right.
it would just be kind of a waste of our time.
Yeah, there's a reason we did this.
Exactly.
We already answered that question. The answer is no. We already answered that to give you the power, to give staff the guidelines, the power of the resolution to, hey, this is where the commission is. And so I think we've already answered that question.
And that's been
No.
super helpful. And so that has helped guide me through this summer and saved all of us a whole bunch of time, including the other people's. But the question is, one, are you comfortable with the resolution that you had? For right now, we'll revisit it again at spring planning. Because I wanted us to check in with you. Like, okay, we feel like we're good with what we decided. So that's what I'm hearing. You're still good with that.
I'd like to ask you a question, put you on the spot a little bit. Because you're so close to this industry and people coming to you and so on. And you know what the resolution was. Do you see a business opportunity to you that makes sense, that you think we ought to consider, regardless of what the resolution said? Are we missing an opportunity here from your perspective?
And you don't have to answer that right
Yeah.
now. One thing we could do, which I would recommend, is if we could get the information about the businesses maybe before fall planning, commissioners could look at it if they would like. And but I do think that with everything that's happening with the bridge, everything, and I do agree with Commissioner Fox, unless there is something that really stands out and you say, this would be an amazing opportunity fit, whatever the circumstances are, to let us know, email that, and address it fall planning. But I do think it's more appropriate for us to readdress the resolution in the spring to see if we're still on that path. I know that there's a lot of stuff going on with the bridge. That's all kind of dependent on one another.
I will email you all to let you know what proposals that I think fit the qualifications on there. There's just a few. And then if you want that to come to fall planning, we can add it. And if you think no, then let's keep it.
Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that Daryl and staff feels that that resolution, as it was drafted, has given them not only clarity, but the ability and the power to make those initial decisions. And so that every single idea does not come here. It has to be qualified through you first. And if that's a yes, then good. Because that's what I think was the intent of it.
Yeah, and yes, it has. And then Commissioner Fox, just to your question, with that, with the proposals, are they, and you asked me, are these a really great thing? Are you asking, is it a great thing that the port should do? Like, is it great for the port financially and whatnot, or is it a great thing for the person who's applying to do it? Like,
I'm
is it a
sorry,
great?
I think of the port for the port.
Right. So the great thing for the port would be the revenue out of it, or is it something the port should do itself? I'm just asking for clarity before I answer that.
I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay,
I would be willing to think about if you see there's a business opportunity that the port can generate some revenue. And we'd have to modify, a resolution before, but to you, it makes sense. It's important enough to bring to the committee. I think you should. And then make your case, and then we decide, yeah, we agree with you. We need to make an adjustment, or no, we don't. And thank you very much, but the answer is no.
And I would add on to what Commissioner Fox said, great to the port. Or maybe the second criteria would be great to the community.
That's what I was gonna say, but we don't want, I mean, my opinion is that it's not, the boundaries aren't so hard and fast that if you see something that you're like, oh my gosh, this would be so great for our community, that you can't like bring it to us. Cause
I would
if there
agree.
might be some awesome ideas that benefit our community so much, but
Yeah.
are maybe is really outside of the box that you'd
Yeah.
love to hear.
Yep. Does that give you good direction? Perfect. Okay, next we have Executive Director report, Mr. Greenwood.
Yeah, just a couple of items that were not in the printed report. Some of you may have been following FEMA's biological opinion. This is the National Marine Fisheries Services BIAP that would make significant changes to the implementation of the flood insurance program. This is the issue that the governor of the state of Oregon asked FEMA to kind of put the brakes on. This has the potential to really affect development in the flood zones, and ports, all 23 of us here in Oregon tend to be right next to the water. So there could be some unintended consequences as far as development, for instance, on the south side of the marina. So right now there's a 75-foot setback. If you want to, redevelop that area, likely anything developed would be 75 feet away from the water. There's numbers as big as 175 feet with this new biological opinion. That would almost put us out in I-84 for that site. So something that we're tracking. The county and the city has different approaches to the implementation of this, and so just something I wanted to get on your radar to monitor as it moves forward. Let's see. In front of you is a project fact sheet. This is just a draft. This is something that Commissioner Shepard has been working with WSP and KPFF for the roundabout down on by lot 1. The idea is that it's about once every 6 months, the project will put out kind of a fact sheet. And so this is WSP's first foray for fall of 2024. Just talking a little bit about why there's a roundabout, the schedule, the funding, and some of the components. This would tie in to the Columbia Area Transit bus hub. But if there's any feedback to this before we issue it, we'll probably issue it next Monday. So direct any comments to Ben or myself. Yeah. have anything that you'd like to add.
That's one question on
Sure.
that, just for clarification, when people talk to us about it, I noticed in this red, we are now referring to Barnum property as lot 1. Is that appropriate moving forward, just for references? Because I think that the roundabout, it seems like, well,
The structure of the Barnum property will be affected by the
They're
roundabout,
putting
that's why I
it
think they're
together.
including it.
okay,
And not so much the buildable area, but the corner of it is
Mhm.
affected by the project. More so than anything.
but it's not officially being conjoined into a single lot, but just
No.
for all intents and reference purposes, we're kind of including both pieces, just making sure.
I think that's accurate. You know, I think when you mention lot 1, everybody kind of knows what we're talking about. But yes, there are some other abutting properties that would be affected as well.
Okay.
Let's see, also, a section of the Portal Trust was donated to the museum, so it's now on display, and Ryan did a nice job. He found a photo of the portal when it was still up there and circled it, so now when you go and see that, it's about a 3-foot chunk of the portal that was damaged. There's actually a photo showing where it was in the portal. So it's a pretty cool interpretive piece that the museum is showing, and thank you to Commissioner Fox for coming to the open house. That was pretty good, well attended.
Yeah, well, it's good. Nice little event. I think Arthur Babbitts did a really good job digging up old photos. Dr.
That's a sweet spot for sure. And then Gretchen Goss, who was the event manager for the Centennial, reported that almost $12,000 was earned in the sale of merchandise. So the final accounting is going to be done here shortly, and she'll produce a more thorough report likely in November. If you haven't already, please finish the Oregon Government Ethics Commission training. And then let's see, I do have a meeting to, just talking about the Centennial event. Just thank you to everybody that was involved. I think Commissioners Chapman and Gary did a great job chairing the committee, and Gretchen did a wonderful job of really taking as much of the effort off of support staff. But Ryan's guys were out there. We had toll takers involved. So it was really pretty much all hands on deck, but the heavy lifting was certainly done by the 3 committee members.
I'd certainly second, third, and fourth that motion. I think you guys did an absolutely outstanding job. And as you know, I don't say that often. And I thought it was a really well-run, safe day. And I think it's something that people are going to remember for a long time.
I have one question for Ryan. It would be interesting to hear what the feedback of staff is. You don't have to do it now, but that would be neat to hear if they felt burdened by it, if they enjoyed it.
It was well received.
Okay.
I was out at the list span, and like you guys said, a lot of people come up asking me thousands of questions. Luckily, I was able to answer them all, and they were just random all over the place. But a lot of people cried because the opportunity that they got and that the board gave for them to be able to do that. No negativity that I heard out on the pitch itself, so it was great all the way around. Right.
So thank you for that, Ryan. Lots of pictures on the plaque. Ryan took that off, cleaned it up, showed it last month. Lots of pictures around that. We did receive a few complaints, just out of full transparency, regarding an incident on the Washington side with our security team. We're dealing with that. We've got a meeting with Kenton tomorrow. We'll certainly report to Christy on that. But we're not just, we're following through on that. But, in the whole thing, there were maybe nearing 55,000 people. I think there was less than 50 comments that were negative. So I think it can be considered a huge success. Just a couple other things. I'm hoping that at least 3 of you can be here on October 22nd for a special meeting. We do have 3 contracts that I'm hoping to get to you later this week for possible approval next Tuesday from today.
I mean, evening meeting or?
We can do a Zoom meeting. It doesn't have to, it could just be during the day. I'm hoping it doesn't take more than a half hour.
What's the contract?
So they are well, we have another action item to enter into negotiations with the real estate. And so our hope is to bring the actual contract with after negotiations and get that done.
So the real estate one is moving out of here, going someplace else.
Yes, I'm hoping that tonight you'll give staff authority to start negotiating.
So some of that I gotta stand away from.
Yes, yes. I don't, not for the real estate. I don't think so, because this is more for the MSA.
Okay.
And
Overall portfolio.
leasing, like the big 7 building and the.
If you want me involved in the 22nd, just please send me a note quick, because my calendar's
It's
already.
filling up. Is there anybody that's not here next Tuesday? Everybody's around, so it's just a matter of getting the time.
Okay.
So, okay, that sounds good. I'll get back out to you on some times. And then just one last thing, I do like to report on what other agencies in the region are doing. And so I did sit in on a special meeting of the Bridge Authority last Friday. And I think everybody was very surprised on just with everything in the construction industry. The new preliminary cost estimate for the replacement bridge is.
Let me jump in.
Yeah.
Okay. First off, before
Right,
you say anything, there is a public news release that went out this afternoon. So we would need to make sure that the numbers that we're talking about are the same numbers that are in that one, which I've got in front of me. So
You're
Yeah.
more than welcome.
So the new estimate on the bridge as configured right now is $1.12 billion. That's a significant increase over the 520 that we've been using. It's made up of a number of changes that have taken place. There are 2 really big ones. One is inflation. We originally had 4% per year inflation on the 520 with one adjustment first year to take it up to about 12%. In the 3 years since we've done that estimate, inflation in this part of the industry has actually gone up 51.3% in 3 years. So that's a big, big chunk of the increase. The other big chunk of it is in the foundations. As you guys all know, we found out about it, a while back, that the current bridge is not sitting on rock. Well, that means for the new bridge, we got to go a lot deeper, like 90 to 100 feet deeper for their foundations. And that's on $200 million plus. Because of the cost of that thing. The third element of it is bridge strikes, believe it or not. What happened out in Baltimore can happen here, primarily with the barges. So there's a whole evaluation going through on that and the impact. That is actually equal to or more stringent than seismic on our foundations because of the configuration and how deep things are. So those are 3 really big increases that actually take you over the number that we've got. And we've worked hard the last couple of months. We changed from concrete to steel. We've increased the spans between the piers. We've actually reduced 4 piers out of the water. That was about a $50 million reduction that offset part of the increase. And the teams are working hard to try and figure out other areas to pull this thing back down. So it was a shock to us. It's going to be a shock to the public. The reason why we did it, and it's important, there's one outstanding federal grant. It's BIP. And when we went for our $200 million grant from infrastructure, we did 2 of them at the same time, one to infrastructure, one to BIP. We got the full 200 million from the infrastructure. We did not get the bid. But we were ranked very high, so it automatically transfers to the next year. We were given an opportunity to adjust it. So we were struggling the last several days, okay, let's adjust it, and we went with the amount that we need to take us all the way up to the new number from the feds, which is 500 and something like.
It's 532, 532.
Yeah, something like 532, to get us to where we need to go. That assumes that the two states, we've always said we wanted 125 from each one. We're not changing that. So we've been talking to the state folks the last several days. We're not asking for more, but we need the 125 from each state. With the federal funding off of the BIP, we can still make this project go. That's what's going on.
Commissioner, just one other thing too, talking to Mike Shannon, that the start construction date.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna talk about that, but I will, because of, not just because of the increase in cost. If we didn't have that, we were pushing right up against the window to be able to start construction in October of 25. Primarily, initially, it was because we weren't gonna have the rod. We think we're now gonna have the rod. Then it was funding from the states to get full funding. That's still really, really iffy. So we're kind of thinking now with big increase, the odds of us going into the water in 2025 is probably gone. And we'll delay that 1 year. What does that mean for the opening of the project? We don't know. By moving to steel, it shortens the construction schedule considerably, assuming that we have cash flow funding to be able to fund it. So we position the project material wise to take an advantage of an acceleration if we've got all the funding. So we've been looking at this thing for months, this way, that way over there, trying to position ourselves best we can. We're not ready to give up. Nobody on the team is ready to call. We're done. We're not there yet.
Thank you for the update and thank you for all of your hours. I know you put a lot in.
Yeah, if you,
We appreciate that.
Do you dream about bridges?
One bridge.
Just one bridge.
yeah. Actually, two.
Okay, anything else for the?
No, that's it from the executive director's report.
Okay, any commissioner or committee reports? And if not, I will move towards action items. Debbie, you're up first.
Yes, so our personnel committee, which is Commissioner Chapman and Commissioner Yaring, have reviewed the employee handbook and had a lot of really good comments. We also have Heather Martin, who is a part of Ferry Elsner, our legal firm, and one of her areas of expertise is employee handbooks. And so she had significant comments on which we have incorporated into the existing handbook. I'm not going to read through all of this. It's very long. When Commissioner Fox was commenting on how long our packet was, I apologized because I think I'm a big chunk of it. It hasn't been, the handbook hadn't been updated since 2018. It was way overdue. And I have to say thank you to Patty Rosas and to Yana Scoggins, because they did, I get to sit here and take the public credit, but they're the ones that did all the work on it. So they put many hours into this to make sure that it's fair and equitable and meets all the legal requirements. And so that was kind of our goal with this, was to have something that was fair and equitable to the employees, but also was legal. So with that, I don't know if there are any questions, comments, things that you'd like answers to or that stuck out to you with this.
Reading about handbooks, aren't you?
Not probably as much as Patty and Yana.
there's none, I'll jump in, as you would expect. If you go to page, I think it's 97, it talks about the benefits package in comparison to Hood River County
And the city.
Hood River. One of the concerns that I've got is that it appears there's some changes that are being proposed that puts our staff further ahead of the other two staffs as far as benefits. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. And is that what the commission wants to do?
What are those areas that you
Well,
feel?
I'm looking at, you've added, I think, you've added 3 floating holidays per year.
And that's in lieu of 3 holidays that the other agencies get. That's in lieu of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We're not going to take that exact holiday. We're going to have a personal holiday in lieu of that. Also Juneteenth and Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Okay, so when you take all of that in consideration, is our program richer than the other 2 organizations?
No, it's equal to. It would have the same number of holidays, basically.
Okay,
Kind of did that so that because of the fact that we have customer service, be able to keep the offices open, people might not necessarily want to celebrate a specific holiday.
no, I'm fine with that as long as we keep it on
Yeah.
par.
So yes, we want to be certain that they were all fair.
Yes, we had fewer holidays than the city and the county prior to the
Okay.
change.
So the other one was this value-based compensation.
That is different, yes.
And that's somewhat new. If you could kind of explain that a little more.
Yeah, so and it's not entirely different. The county and the cities have some areas where they will pay, they call it a premium, pay a premium to people, for example, for being bilingual in Spanish and English. Also typically I've seen it with like paramedics. So if you have a firefighter that's also trained as a paramedic, there's typically that. So what we've talked about, and I don't believe this is new to the commission, but we're finally incorporating it, is the idea that people can get certifications and there'll have to be boundaries put around this, and they'll have to be very well defined, but certifications for things like welding, we've talked about that with Ryan's group, that if they get to become proficient in welding and they get a certification and they keep that certification, then they would get perhaps say a 5% premium on their pay for having that certification.
I kind of thought that's what we were doing when I read it. And I may have read it incorrectly because it was way down in the 100
Yeah.
page range by
Yes,
that
it
time.
is.
The way I kind of read it was that Kevin can go take a class on something that has nothing to do with his job, but has to do with somebody else's job on the port. But if he takes that test, he can get a bump in salary. Where what I was expecting is if Kevin's job description is in this area and additional training would help him in that job area, I'm all for it.
Mhm.
But if it's just, I'm going to call it a professional student to go get credits so I can raise my salary, I'm not for that. From our point of view on this job, if it helps him with his job, cool. And the way I read it, I didn't get that part of it out of there.
And there are actually 2 pieces to this. There's one that's for the certifications I was just talking about, which would be, like I said, it would, for example, I could not go become certified in welding and then all of a sudden get an additional increase. That would not make sense because I don't intend to ever do any welding. But again, one of Ryan's employees could go and do that and get that additional income. The whole plan will have to be put together and the supervisor will have to approve it. The manager will have to approve it. Somebody can't just willy-nilly go up and do these things and expect a pay increase. There's another piece to it which I think is the part that you're talking about, where We do have, and we've always, this isn't actually something new. We've always had where we would pay for people's formal education up to a certain amount if it's a position that will benefit the port. So for example, Yana Scoggins did get her bachelor's degree and is very close to having her master's degree in accounting because she wants to continue to progress in the finance department. And so it's something that's very specific to her job. It's something that will definitely benefit the port. And so we are paying under that, we are paying for some of her college education.
Yeah, the key thing, and I saw that in here, there's limitations.
Yes,
And it requires manager approval.
it requires manager approval and they have to get certain grade, she has to
Yeah.
get a B or above or whatever.
And I'm a strong supporter and
Yeah.
encourage that.
So we do have two pieces to that. It all has to be approved by managers. They can't just decide that they want to do something and just go do it.
And then one other thing, just for clarification, in comparing to the city and the county, is under the health insurance. We had talked before about if it's typical procedure to have agencies provide family health insurance. And I recall correctly, the answer was yes. So just so that it's in here, maybe let's add that. Just to state that this is for employee and family.
Okay.
And
it is standard that the organization pays for a single employee or a family, an employee with a family. They
Certainly not standard in my world, but apparently it is in public sector.
It is
Is that what you're trying
in
to
the
say?
public, it is the public sector,
I
yeah.
know,
Because that's incredibly rare in the private.
yes, please don't tell my employees. Is there any other questions?
Move that we approve resolution 2024-25-8, adopting the updated employee handbook.
Second.
Any discussion? Not, can I get a all favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, action item B, Mr. Greenwood, real estate services.
Yes, so we have conducted the interviews and our Tom Bocci from Kidder Matthews was very impressive. We interviewed 4 individuals. We received packages from 5. Tom was in the first round when Ann was selected. And so he did a very good job. He's got 30 years of experience. I did forward his resume to you. And so at this point, we're recommending that staff get the authority to negotiate the contract, to start negotiating with him, to do a master services agreement and 3 work orders. That would be for the sale of the Big 7 building, and then to lease space in the Big 7 building. And maybe in some ways, the most important one is leasing all of our other vacancies.
So the question I have for you, maybe you explained it last time, I was checked out or because of other things going on. What are we doing with Ann?
So what we did, we asked Ann to resubmit.
Yeah.
We learned a lot over this last 6 months.
Yeah.
We modified the procurement document.
Yeah.
And so we just took another look at who was involved in the area. We got, like I said, we got 5 initial responses. 6 months ago, we only got 2. So I think we have a much wider berth of, or wider coverage.
So are we dropping Ann?
So right, so this would, her work orders termed out after 6 months, which is at the end of October.
Okay.
And so then the plan would then be for Tom to go on to 3 6-month work orders starting November 1 and get him going.
Have you done an evaluation between the 2 and you think?
We evaluated all 5.
Okay.
And interviewed 4. What's that?
Who scored this?
So it was myself and Molly, who is our new project coordinator. So she will be the lead staff person with the real estate agent. So her role is basically like pretty manager. Like if issues come in from tenants she'll direct traffic, get them to the right person. She's the one setting up the calendars as far as the 6 month for contracts or leases expiring or renewals. So it was basically Molly and myself that scored them all.
Okay, I guess that leads to my comment is,
Yeah.
I don't know Tom, which in itself means nothing. However, I also don't know Tom's depth of knowledge as it relates to our community, the real estate market here, which I think is important. I'm happy to take a recommendation to see how this goes. But I would like to make sure that in any agreement that it is at least initially termed and that there's no financial obligation to the port at the end of that term, should the port decide not to move forward.
Yeah.
As far as any kind of percentages or compensation, it shouldn't exist. So I'm happy to take the recommendation, but let's make sure that the port sees how we can see how this goes for a while.
Yeah, there was some talk about a retainer, and then having the retainer backed out of the percentage, and we just decided not to go that route. I think Tom is totally fine with the commissions. So absolutely, those work orders are 6 months to allow this opportunity to see how it's going. And so I think it's good to have kind of a test period to see how things are working. The master services agreement is a 5-year agreement, but the work order, we can back out after the work orders expire. And just with notice, we can end the contract. And so I've been in touch with Anne and really appreciated everything she's done and her involvement, not just serving as a real estate agent, but also her time here at the board. But yeah, it'll be a 6 month, just an opportunity to see how things go in that individual. He lives here in Hood River. Yeah, he's been here since I believe 2012. But has 30 years of real estate experience. And very good, great chemistry. He had some background on things like storage units, some hangars down in California. One thing that was really impressive about him was that he had worked with local government, so Sacramento County. And so I think sometimes going in and working with local governments can be a challenge for real estate agents if they don't have that background. So I think that was an area he scored high in as well.
If we're gonna have a special meeting on the 22nd, can I ask to see that agreement on the 19th?
Sure.
Or so that we can review it?
My hope is to get you all 3 of those items like later on this week.
Okay.
So with that, I'd like to make a recommendation to enter into negotiations with Tom Bocci.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Yep.
Any discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Great, thank you.
And then action item C, back on.
The 501c3. So this was an interesting one because because of the short amount of time that I had available, given that we're still finishing up the software implementation and also in the middle now of the financial statement audit, I did ask one of our former attorneys, Joanna from
Kristen Campbell.
From Kristen Campbell's firm, to help me with this. And so she's the one that actually put it together. She's the one that brought up the question about the purpose and was a little bit, had been pushing her because I wanted to get this on your September agenda. And so I had been pushing her to get it done in time for September. And she had become a bit concerned about the purpose. But then after she consulted with some other attorneys that do these 501c3s for other local governments, she came back and said, we are fine to move forward. And I had expressed to her that I wanted to keep it generic because we have talked not only about the waterfront, but we've also talked about the airport benefiting from a 501c3.
And just to clarify, historically, the genesis of this idea was so that we could build a emergency resource center at the airport and get certain kinds of funding from organizations that are limited and they cannot donate money to a government, but they can donate to a 501c3 foundation that's part of, for adjunct to a government. So the goal is really to help us get that funded.
Yes.
And of course, it can be used for other things, but that really was the initial purpose.
So we did attempt to keep it generic, so that it could benefit the airport, it can benefit the waterfront. Donations to it, typically donations to foundations like this are specific, and so there isn't really a concern. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's always a concern, especially as a finance director, that the money gets spent somewhere it's not supposed to get spent. But typically what happens is donations come into a 501c3 for a specific purpose. They're labeled as such in the financial accounting software, and then they're spent for that purpose. This will be a separate legal entity, hence it will require an audit. It will require its own set of financial statements. It will require its own audit. But this is not unique, as we've heard. You know, there are Friends of the Library are very common. A lot of parks districts have foundations. Other local governments have foundations. So these are not districts. School districts, yes, school districts are a big one that have foundations. So the money will be kept legally separate in its own. It will have its own bank account when it starts getting money in. And
So I understand the emergency response center. I get that. And I can see real value there. What was the thought down at the recreation area? What are we thinking?
well, one good example is that, and my brain is gonna not remember the name of the windsurfer guy that passed away, and we do a memorial. Steve Gates. We did take donations for a Steve Gates memorial, for example, and we did that through the port. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that this foundation would be perfect for, is if somebody wants to do something specific down there, if we want to build some kind of a special shelter, or if something comes up where people want, people all come together and they want something built down at the waterfront, and we agree that that's a good idea, this is a perfect way to get that money and keep it and show it's for transparency. A lot of the reason is for transparency, is to show that this money is coming in, it's separately designated, and it is used for that specific purpose.
I can give a good example. Like for example, the Columbia Gorge Young Life. When you make a donation, it literally has a drop down menu. Is this for this event? Is this for this event? They have one for operations. They have one for general fund. I don't care where it goes. So that would definitely be a part of the process of making sure we're incredibly clear of your donation goes to exactly what you want it to, and mine might go to someplace else.
A couple questions. Are we proposing an external board of directors for this?
So this was written so that it can, we wrote it broadly because I did not know if this board wants to also be the board on the 501c3, or if you want to appoint separate people.
I think that's something we need to consider, and it's not for tonight, but that's something we need to consider.
Yes.
Because I do think it's going to be important that there's no perception that any of these funds are being misused in any way. So it's very easy to be specific on the donation side. I want my dollar to go X, fine. But I think that the management of that and the administration of that, we might want to think about that being a half a step removed from some of us. As maybe as almost as a committee would be, a board committee. And secondly, I'm curious about the fees involved, because with this, I know there will be some, but I get concerned sometimes with nonprofits if their fee structure is too high. And hopefully we can mitigate some of that doing that internally. I'm not concerned in the slightest with staff mismanaging funds, but I just want to make sure it's very clear where the fees are, what they're being used for, and exactly where the money is. And if we think there needs to be any kind of, separation of us versus that we take into consideration. And that's something you talk about fall planning, maybe. Something to think about on the board side.
And as I said, we did leave the bylaws flexible enough for you to make that decision.
This is just step one.
Yes.
How many, I'm almost wondering if this is more for as a discussion item. Or if they wanted to modify like the membership on the foundation's board, if that would be a component of the bylaws.
No, well, I shouldn't say no that quickly, because it can be, but I wouldn't recommend it, only because this commission has this viewpoint, 10 years from now, there will likely be different members on the commission and they may have a different viewpoint. I mean, you can change the bylaws, but it's not something that should be taken lightly to change them.
Thank you.
So then,
Bylaws look good to me.
can we get a motion to approve the 501c3 bylaws?
I move that we approve resolution 2024-25-9 to form a 501c3 corporation, which is the resolution on page 177.
Can I get a second? Second. In discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair?
Aye.
Okay, commission call upcoming meetings. Any commissioners have anything they would like to toss in the hat? Not, upcoming meetings, have a look at that, and then that is everything. Then we will recess regular session and enter into executive session. Thank you everyone for coming, and have a lovely evening.
I get to go too?
Yes, you can go too.